I just want to personalize this a little bit. Don't mean to put you on the spot necessarily,
Mm.
but if one of your primary jobs, as you put them, for snacking, where would you fall here? Which one of these four buckets would be your primary?
That is a good question.
I am honored and excited to be talking to Mary Mathis, who um, I'm just going to say is running things at, or at least a decent chunk of things at Alpha Diver. And we've published some of Alpha Diver's research in the past. Um, their most recent, very interesting bit here is called the Snack 50 Psych Pulse. And today's discussion, we're going to center around how that's broken out for the Gen Z cohort
Mhm.
and what their preferences are. And Mary was kind enough, wise enough to note before we started this conversation that not all of the customers' audience is involved in the CPG world.
Mhm.
But I'll tell you something. After going through this, I think that the insights here are applicable well beyond CPG because of the drivers behind them. So
Mhm.
with that, I was supposed to introduce you, but Mary, thank you for joining me.
Glad to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Sure. Can you tell us exactly what you do at Alpha Diver?
Sure. I am our Director of Data Insights, which means I work, very closely with kind of, as we put it, both the front of the house and the back of the house. So I have certainly a very client-facing role of helping to understand what it is that clients, what are the questions they're grappling with, and how do we translate that into a study that's going to make sure we answer those questions, and working with the neuroscientists on our team whose models underpin a lot of what we do, and that model-based approach that we talked about earlier. And so interfacing with them and really that translation of what did we find into an actionable story for the client, as to that it gets at who are you trying to get, and how do you better activate with them based on what we now know about how they're making decisions and what's driving their behavior.
Thank you. Much better description than I could have gotten to. I'd like to dive right into this report
Sure.
because I found a handful of things that were really, really interesting to me, and I think could be really interesting to our audience. Um, let's just start first with how Alpha Diver has defined the four jobs. I'm
Mm.
doing rabbit ears right now around jobs that different snacks do for customers. I was intrigued by the word jobs to describe kind of those buckets of motivation.
hmm Sure.
Um, but I'm just going to read them through, but I think it'd be really fun to unpack them because, and I think this is one great example of how these emotional drivers apply outside of CPG and
For
certainly
sure.
outside.
And they certainly do.
So snackers who snack based on function. And I'm reading your definition here, providing
hmm
a practical options that make rational
Rationals.
sense. Okay. Those are the functional snackers. Experienced snackers, providing new sensory discoveries to explore. Conformity snackers, providing social connection and agreement. And then lastly, impulse snackers, fueling feel good impulse purchases.
hmm
How did we come across those as the main buckets? How were those developed? And then
hmm
maybe we can kind of pull them apart a little bit.
Sure. So those four drivers, as we call them, conveniently also describe the four key decision-making lenses that we're diagnosing in consumers and shoppers in our work. And this derives from a lot of the work that our principal neuroscientist, Siggy Hale, did in his time in academia studying neuroscience. We really understanding how we as humans, our brains evolved to make decisions. And there's these four different decision-making styles and lenses that we evolved over time. Impulse being the first one, which is that very instinctual, as I referenced earlier, very gut reaction, kind of the back of the brain, your lizard brain, if you will, what feels good right now, and then we evolve, from that, we evolved, episodic memory, which gives us the ability to that experience of like, I'm building up this portfolio of things I have tried, experiences I have had, and these things that I can tap into, and wanting to look for more new experiences to add to that portfolio. So this, that's a lens that's, very much about all five senses. How's it going to feel, taste, smell, what's it going to, and very sensorial, and wanting to take in the world that way. Then there's that lens of about the conformity is very much about, what do people like me agree is a good thing, following the wisdom of the tribe, if you will, and what's something that will make everybody happy, maintains my good standing within the group that I'm in. In the case of snacking, it's probably what keeps my household happy, or the group of friends whose party I'm bringing a snack to, whatever it is, thinking about it in that very social way. And then that functional space is, very, very rational, front of the brain. When you sit people down in a focus group and ask them why they do things, that's where everybody thinks that's how everybody thinks they behave, right? Oh, well, I look at the nutritional information and I assess the price, and I make this very informed, well thought out decision. And some people do that, but most people don't. Most people are operating through one of these other three lenses. And one of the things that we look at in a study like this is seeing both which of those lenses comes to the fore for a given person, a different segment of the population. As you mentioned in this, we dove deeper into like which of these really matters for Gen Z and seems to explain their behavior in this space. But they also tell us, how do people think about these different types of products? How do people think about your brand? They tend to associate it with one of these four things as well. And so if one of these four drivers really fuels my behavior, and that's also the driver that I really associate with your brand, that's a really nice, alignment that suggests there's a lot of opportunity there for me to really grow my brand with that kind of consumer space. If you're over in driven, what's driving your behavior is that very impulsive, what feels good right now, I'm going to grab that purchase space, and I'm offering something that's very functional with all of this, better for you messaging and all of that, that suggests there's some disconnect there. Doesn't mean you can't get that person, but what we're setting out to help you understand is, how do I reframe, given what I understand about what's actually driving their behavior, to to make that more functional claim more appealing to somebody that's not actually thinking about it through that lens.
I'm wondering out loud here. It seems to me, and I'm looking at the conformity snackers.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a conformity snacker. I, I don't see myself as that. Maybe I am deep down, but it seems like one individual could at different times be any one of these four people. They could be, it could be
Sure.
very situational.
Absolutely.
And now that I've said that I'm not a conformity snacker, I'm starting to wonder, maybe I actually am, depending on the circumstance. But um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, how do we reconcile that uh, for a brand? Because it can be super situational right now, because as Super Bowl party's happening. I got to have the guac and chips,
Right.
because in that case, everybody's a conformity snacker, right?
uh,
Um,
well, that's an interesting topic that we have explored with companies in the past. A lot of companies are interested in the occasion based consumption scenario. And yes, absolutely, these the lens that you use shifts depending on the context that you're in, and you tend to have one of these that you use more often, you've become more comfortable with, and how you navigate the world in your daily life. But absolutely, when you're dropped into a different context, you certainly can shift, and another one comes more to the fore. And so yes, in that case, if what I'm buying for myself, or in my typical grocery shopping trip, I could be definitely approaching that from a different lens than when I go when I'm going to the store to shop for a specific occasion. Yes, the Super Bowl, et cetera. We've done some interesting work in the past that has found that the conformity may not, it's for some people is not actually the main thing that drives that. If you're the host of the party, it may be more around what does what I offer say about me to my guests. There can be some other factors so kind of subconsciously driving that
True.
as
Yep.
well. But thinking around those unpacking those different layers of that is definitely a big part of what we do, and how we and helping customers sort of understand what is the relative priority of how much does occasion matter and influence how much these drivers change, or is it more universal? There are some contexts where just the nature of the situation tends to make us all a little bit more the same. We all tend to gravitate more toward the same lens, like doing your taxes. There's not really a good impulsive, well, you could certainly do it from an impulsive lens. It might not work out so great for you with the IRS. You probably want to be more thinking in that functional, rational,
Yeah. Yeah.
let me make sure that I'm really buckled down and getting this right mindset for something like that. We probably gravitate there. But in different scenarios, there could be more of a spread, and you see different types of people emerge that approach it from different angles. So it's interesting for like things like segmentation, adding that additional layer of understanding of, okay, you found there's these different segments of people that approach your category in a different way, and then we can kind of layer on this additional insight with it's because their decision-making lens is different. So all of these different, the different attitudinal variables, the demographic variables, things that folks look at when they're doing those typical segmentations, we can then layer on top of that. And yeah, this cohort of people has a tendency to share this decision-making style, and that that's another layer of explanation as to why you see that their behavior is different from that group over there.
But I mean, I was thinking about, and we'll talk about this later down as we get deeper into the report, but I think there are all kinds of fun use cases for this data that we can see playing out in the real world as we go to grocery store, convenience store, airport, wherever they might sell some of these goods.
Absolutely.
And talking about the reasons why some of that's there for sale in those certain locations. But before we move on, I just want to personalize this a little bit. Don't mean to put you on the spot necessarily, but if one of your primary jobs, as you put them, for snacking, where would you fall here? Which one of these 4 buckets would be your primary?
That is a good question. Probably, I would say most of the time I probably am in that experience bucket of I have more of a sweet tooth than a savory tooth. So yeah, I'm looking for the new chocolate to try, or a new candy, or what's the new crazy flavor of Oreo that they're offering this month. Yeah.
Well, I'm squarely in impulse, but I use
Okay.
experience to rationalize my behavior.
There you go. Yeah.
Right. Whatever it takes.
Sure.
If I've got a bag of Sour Patch Kids in my hand, I can make up all kinds of things to justify that. I want to take a quick break from the conversation to tell you about one of our sponsors. What could you achieve if you knew what your customers expected ahead of time? What if you could know what customers expect by category and by brand 12 to 18 months ahead of traditional brand tracking methods? And what if you could know exactly where to adjust and where to spend in order to derive the most benefit every time? A customer expectation audit allows you to identify areas that require strategic reinforcement, as well as pinpoint which values will contribute most to an emotional bond with your brand, and optimize accordingly. Customerland has partnered with Brand Keys, the world's oldest loyalty-focused consumer research firm, to bring real-world customer expectation audits to brands, brand managers, and to CX practitioners everywhere. Want to know where your brand stands and exactly what to do about it? Go to expectationaudit.com. That's expectationaudit.com and download a sample audit today. So the first kind of breakout you've got here is you're calling it they choose, where you've got a general population ranking for what types of snacks people like versus what Gen Z tends to like. And Gen Z happens to like the chewy stuff. And you call out one brand in particular, Slim Jims, which are the most ubiquitous, but I don't think I've ever seen anybody buy one before. I mean, I know they're selling because they're everywhere, but that was the number one brand for Gen Z. Was that a surprise to you? Because it is to me.
Well, Slim Jim is number 11 with Gen Z. But it did jump 10
Oh, that's right.
spots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean in general it was a little surprising at first, but when we look, so we had 12 different categories of snacks that were comprised by these 50 brands that we ranked. So we looked at the category level, how do they fall out, Gen Pop versus Gen Z, and then across the individual brands, how are their rankings changing? And as you mentioned, for the two sort of chewiest kinds of snacks out of the 12 were fruity chewy candy, so your Sour Patch Kids and so on, and then the jerkies and meat snacks. And among the general population, neither of these ranked particularly highly. Fruity chewy candy was number 9 out of the 12, and then the jerky and meat snacks were number 10. With Gen Z, fruity chewy candy jumps up to number 4. It's the category of snack that changed the most with them. And then jerky and meat snacks jumps to number 7. And when we look at the corresponding brands in those spaces with Gen Z, we see the same thing. Every one of them increases its psychological importance to Gen Z versus the Gen Pop. Slim Jim jumps 10 spots. Sour Patch Kids, actually that one jumps the most, from being number 40 with the Gen Pop up to 22 with Gen Z.
I get
Similar,
that.
like, yeah, Airheads, Skittles, Starburst, even Twizzlers, which, I mean, it goes from 43 to 38, but anything in that fruity chewy space universally does better with the Gen Z audience. And similarly, the jerky and meat snacks brands. And so there's two things that are interesting here that are commonalities between these, seemingly very different types of snacks. One is that they're both, as we talked earlier, they're both serving that impulse, feel good snacking job for consumers. So that starts to tell us something about, like, well, what is Gen Z looking for in a snack? Because they're gravitating more than the Gen Pop to the snacks that are doing that job for them. They're also gravitating, their numbers 1 through 3, I think, definitely include cookies and chocolate. So there's also a heavy of that experiential angle as well for them. But the other thing that these two categories have in mind or have in common is they require more effort to chew them. You can't, you're not inhaling a bag of Sour Patch Kids in 3 bites like you could, say, a Reese's peanut butter cup. I mean, you could, but you can savor them more, you can make them last. There's a little bit more work. I'm thinking about like Skittles and Starburst, things like that too.
Right.
And certainly like meat with beef jerky. And just, there's a lot of research out there in the field of psychology that shows too that there's a calming benefit, a sort of a physiological calming benefit from the act of chewing something. And when we think about all of the different things going on in the world that we've talked about already that are creating stress, I think for everyone in the population, but certainly we see a lot out there about how Gen Z, this cohort, as they're coming into adulthood, is under a lot of stress. But there's the student loan issue, and having a lot of their educational years being disrupted by COVID and learning over Zoom and missing out on a lot of those rites of passage that they didn't get to go through in a typical way, and all of the different stressors that are facing this generation. The fact that they're gravitating more toward these categories that maybe provide that little bit of calming relief just from the act of eating them was interesting to us. That there's something that really all kind of is all hanging together there that we're seeing. that I don't think anybody else has really been talking about, that we thought was cool, and a good actionable learning if you're in that space, if you're in that space, or you're thinking about how do I appeal to this mindset, to think about that angle.
So two questions come to mind. One is that these are would fall be categorized more as impulsive buys. As you noted earlier, can
Yes.
you? So one question would be, based on your other research outside of this category, do you see that Gen Z is more apt to make impulse buys than other generations? Is it, can you take these learnings and necessarily overlay them into other categories?
Um, in some extents, yes, we see their what drives their behavior in, say, like the beverage categories is also similar. Um, in other work we've done, though, in sort of their more general grocery or household shopping behavior shows more of that conformity skew, where, okay, I'm coming into adulthood, I'm trying to demonstrate my, that I'm, a good
Adultness.
member of the
Yeah,
house. Yeah, I'm
right.
a good member of the household. I'm thinking about everyone else. I'm bringing, I'm getting stuff that, everybody's going to be happy with. They feel that little bit of tension there. Okay, no, I need to think more about what everybody else wants too, not just what's for me right now. So context does matter, and we do see some differences, but we also see, there are several areas where that impulsiveness, that like looking for something that just helps me feel better right now, it definitely explains a lot of what's going on with that generation.
Would you say, I'm asking for something that's unknowable, I'm sure, but would you say that based on what you see, that impulsiveness is more the norm or the anomaly, and I'll call it general CPG world?
Well, and I think we can even more broadly than CPG, just in general, what we've seen is there is a steady increase in this this desire to blow off some steam, seek a little bit of, tension release, we react more emotionally, make ourselves feel better across just even how people are just navigating the world in their daily life. We've seen a very dramatic increase in that, trying to fulfill that emotional job, serve that emotional need out among the population in general. And, to us, I think that explains a lot about why these brands that serve that, you think about, soft drinks, energy drinks, candy, chocolates, that are like these brands that, despite a lot of them having taken price increases, several times over, really probably in the last few years, you listen to their earnings calls for Wall Street, and they're all still making money hand over fist and seeing products fly off the shelves, and they're not really seeing the trade down effects that one might expect, given all of the other discussion we hear
Right.
about what's going on with the economy right now. And it speaks to, because they're still providing that emotional benefit that people are looking for, that little bit of affordable indulgence, that for a few minutes, this makes me feel better. Fast food, another category that's, still doing really well, despite, having to take price increases, despite, economic uncertainty. There's still a pretty sizable swath of the population out there that's willing to say, you know what, yeah, I mean, I should probably be economical and go shop at Aldi and all of that, but screw it, I'm gonna go to McDonald's and go through the drive-through because it's just easier, and
It's here, it's
I'm
easy,
I'm
and
too
I'm
stressed.
hungry.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
exactly.
And I deserve it. Which is a great little segue to the next topic I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
Your heading for this is better for you may not be better for business. And with Gen
Mm,
Z, um, we we've published research from a lot of people, frankly, that Gen Z is tends to be a little bit more authenticity aware, They value things that would feel more genuine. I'm putting air quotes around that one as well.
Mm.
And I don't think it's too much of a stretch to assume that would translate into better for you eating, and yet turns out that's not really the case.
Yeah, that's another, that's another interesting one that, it raises a lot of eyebrows with when we show what we found here, but snack nuts as the kind of the prime example in this category space. That was number 4 with the general population. If you think about what could typically, I think is thought of as a better for you snack, right? It's a nice balance of protein and fat, and it's not all sugary, and but with Gen Z, it plummets to number 11. And we had Blue Diamond and Planters brands in the list too, and each of them drop 21 spots. They're just really drop off with Gen Z. And pretzels be kind of another ostensibly better for you snack that ranks number 12 with them. I think their number 10 was like, snack mix, trail mix, things like that. So we're seeing a lot of consistency that some of the ostensibly better for you snacks that we had featured are just not resonating as much with this audience. They're going much more for the cookie, the chocolate, the chewy, the fruity chewy, etc. And I think there again, it's because what's driving their behavior when they're thinking about snacking most of the time is more that emotional, I'm looking for something that's going to taste good and make me feel better right now. And so it's not to say that a better for you snack can't deliver that, but that's not how most of them are positioned.
It's not
And
sold that way, right?
right.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I saw an article that I shared the other day around, Blue Diamond is launching a new limited flavor that's, a honey butter almond. And it's like that's positioned correctly, like that could be an interesting way of trying to bridge that gap of, it's, they're almonds, they're good for you, etc. But the honey butter flavor gives you more that, a new sensory experience that I might enjoy. It elevates it a little bit. That might help with, making it more appealing to somebody that's looking more for something that's just going to feel good and taste good right now.
Yeah.
So
It's a great name. It's a great idea. I can't wait to see how it performs. I mean, even if the product didn't change at all, which I'm sure it would, labeling something that implies sticky, gooey, and sweet, probably a good idea right now.
yeah, and apparently butter boards are all the rage. So the butter angle, it seems to be, on trend as well. That hopefully will, is in the right, hitting in the right space to appeal. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about the places where I see these kinds of snacks the most. Where they're at
Mm-hmm.
checkout lines in grocery stores. They are in every airport convenience store en masse. There's a whole wall of them, probably better displayed in most of those stores than anywhere else I can think of. Um, and situationally, and I think segment wise, you're talking about uh, a product viability for different reasons in those locations. I mean, if you're in the
Mm-hmm.
checkout line, it's you're probably thinking it's my last chance to get something here. I'm going to look around. Is there anything that looks good here? I can rationalize the M&Ms or the nuts. It's 50-50, but that's probably a good place to have people starting to consider that. And in the airport stores, you're thinking about, I'm about to get on a plane. I'm about to go sit down for a couple hours. I don't really like the airplane food. Let me get something that X, Y, or Z's for me. And my own personal thought process usually goes something like, I don't really like the airplane food, so I'm going to buy something here. So wait, I've already started telling myself I need something better for me, which means
Mm-hmm.
I should not go towards the gummy bears or the sour jacks. I I'm already telling myself I should do something better for myself than that. And I might kind of, begrudgingly shuffle myself over and get some nuts or something. But that's, there are thought processes there I think are going to be at play.
For sure. And that's, the context there, I think certainly can be playing a role. Like we're looking at this more in that context of a more typical in your day-to-day snacking behavior. You're at you're at the 7-Eleven, you're at the grocery store, you're going to grab something. Versus the contextual of, well, I'm about to get on a plane for however many hours, that could potentially for some consumers shift them, even begrudgingly into, in against their, what their impulse might be of what they want versus, okay, that I
Right.
probably should. So, that's,
But I think,
and that's one of the things that we like to study. And if you're a brand that's very heavily promoted in, in that, the airport, your duty free, et cetera, space, how understanding what drives behavior very specific to
right.
that context, and does it really differ from the grocery store format, it is certainly something that we can help unpack and think through.